I'm so bummed. I just thought I had entirely recorded all of my vlog, and I was recording nothing. Tonight, I shall be reading to you. I thought I was going to read the first chapter of Infinite Days, but I've since changed my mind, and I'm going to read you instead a flashback from the book. I've gotten a lot of emails from people asking me about flashbacks, and people seem to really be responding to those on Goodreads and saying that they like the flashbacks. I'm going to read you right before a flashback and right after a flashback, along with the flashback. So I'm doing jazz hands. So you can sort of see how I did it. But first, I want to share with you something amazing. My Italian promotion packet. Does anybody out there speak Italian? Because if you do, can you contact me? Because I want to know what this says. Okay, because first of all, you open it up and there's a lovely photo of me. A lot of makeup on that day. And like blowout, I look gorgeous. Then they provided these inside. Road. Bicken. Lena. What does this say? Teach me, people. The present. I don't know what this says, but I'm dying to know. It's beautiful, though. Roses and... Well, I didn't mean to show another photo of myself. But roses and stuff in Italian I can't understand. I love it. So you've all, in America, have seen the the US arc, which I love. And this is what the UK arc looks like. And it says on the front, 500 years of pain, one chance to live and love again. This is amazing stuff. For somebody who was bartending a year ago to the day, it's still so completely surreal and bizarre. I suppose I probably should have like found the section I was going to read before I did, but so this is going to be right after Lena meets her new friend on campus, and his name is Tony. He's shown her an art tower, which is where he does like most of his artwork, and they've just got their books and they're going to start classes soon. So he's shown her this art tower because he's an artist, and it's just started to rain. And Tony has realized that, he's left his window open in his dorm room, so he's like running down the stairs. And Lena is headed back towards her dorm after seeing the art tower and hanging out with Tony for the first time. So she's coming down the art tower steps. When I reached the second floor, there was a window, much like those in the art tower. It was small and rectangular, but it had a clear view of the meadow and Student Union. I placed my bag down on a step and rested my palm on the cool stone wall. I stuck my face close to the window and watched the raindrops hit the cement of the pathways below. Then it occurred to me I hadn't stood in the rain and felt the raindrops since 1417. The last time I felt the raindrops was the night I left my mother's earring in our apple orchard, the night I met Rode and fell in love at first sight, the night I died. Apple Orchard, Hampstead, England, 1417. The rain fell on the roof of my father's house. We lived in a small 2-story manor behind the grounds of a monastery. The monks were far off from the orchard, separated from our home by 2 great meadows of apple trees. My father was an orphan entrusted to the care of the monks in his childhood. There they taught him about growing apples. It was the middle of the night, and the rain fell against the roof in an easy rhythm. I sat in a rocking chair looking out at my family orchard. The house was silent despite the pattern of the rain and my father's snores echoing downstairs. The embers of the nightly fire still lingered, and my feet were warm. It was the beginning of autumn, and it was warmer than anyone had anticipated. Although it was early September, my father rested easier. We had already sent the first batch of our prized apples to the royal Medici family in Italy. I was dressed in a white nightgown. In those days, the night dresses were flowing and sheer. If someone wanted to, they could have seen all of my 15-year-old self. My hair was still long and brown, but it hung in a loose braid over my left breast and stopped somewhere near my belly button. Through the wet windows, rows and rows of orchards stretched into the darkness, and somewhere to the right in the distance I could see the tiny orange glow of candlelight from the rectangular windows of the monastery. I rocked back and forth in the chair, lazily watching the rain. I reached up to remove my mother's earrings that she had let me borrow that morning. When I touched my earlobe, I realized the right one was gone. I stood up from the chair, the last place I had them. Where was the last place I'd had them? My father had complimented the glint of the gold in the sun in the last row of the orchard. Before thinking twice, I was out the back door. I ran through the rows and fell to my knees. I crawled up and down the last row. I didn't care about the time of the night or that my chemise would be sullied and dirty from the rich earth. I couldn't bring myself to look at my mother's face when I told her I'd lost one of her favorite earrings. She would caress my face, tell me it was only an earring, and mask her disappointment. I had let the rain coat my face and was crawling from one end of the road to the other when a pair of black, silver-buckled boots stepped into my view. These were not the high heels that we are accustomed to in the modern world. These boots were low-heeled, made from a thick hide, and covered the man's leg all the way up to his shin. I followed the length of his leg up his body until I looked into the most piercing set of blue eyes I had ever seen or ever would see. They were framed by dark eyebrows that highlighted the man's jawbone and thin nose. "Having an adventure?" he asked casually, as if he were wondering about the weather. Rode Lewin squatted down on his heels. He had shaggy hair then. As always, he had a proud mouth and a constantly furrowed brow. I was almost 16, had never left my parents' orchard, and the most beautiful man in the world stood in front of me. Well, he looked like a man. Though he could have been young, perhaps my own age, there was something in the way he looked at me that told me this boy, despite his smooth cheeks and youthful expression, was much older than me, as though he had seen the whole world and knew of its many secrets. Rode wore an all-black ensemble, which made the color of his eyes pop out at me from the impenetrable night. I fell back onto the ground. I was wet and soaked through. The mud squished under my heels as I pressed into the ground to move away from the man in front of me. "This is private property," I said. Rode stood back up, placed his hands on his hips, and looked in both directions. "You don't say," he said, as though he didn't know where he was. "What do you want?" I asked. I leaned back onto my hands and looked up at Rode. He walked closer so that there were only a foot of space between us. He extended a hand. I noticed an onyx ring on his middle finger. It was different from any gem I had ever seen before. It was black and solid, flat, without any glint or sparkle. He opened his fingers, and in the middle of his palm was my mother's hoop earring. I looked at the hoop and then into Rhode's eyes. He smiled at me in such a way that I instantly felt something within me that I had never felt before. Something tingled near my heart. I stood up quickly, all the while keeping my eyes on the man in front of me. The rain splattered onto the wet ground. I reached out for the earring, my fingers shaking. I was about to touch the gold when I thought for sure he would close his fingers around mine. The rain fell on his hand, onto me, and his palm was slicked with drops. I looked up at Rode and snatched the earring with a flick of the wrist and placed my palm back by my side. "Thank you," I barely whispered and turned back towards my family's home. In the distance I could discern the flat shape of the roof, even in the dark, rainy night. "I have to go, and so should you," I said, walking away from him. Rode turned me back to face him with one hand on my left shoulder. "I've been watching you," he said, "for some time now." "I've never seen you," I said, and raised my chin in defiance. I didn't realize I was showing him my neck. "The problem for you is that I'm in love with you," Rode said, though it sounded more like a confession. "You can't be in love with me," I said stupidly. "You do not know me." "Don't I? I watch you carefully tend to your father's orchard. I watch the way you braid your hair in your bedroom window, that when you walk you glow as bright as a candle flame. I have known for some time that I must have you near me. I know you, Lena. I know how you breathe." "I don't love you," I said, without a clue why I said it. My chest shuddered with every breath I took. "Oh, come now," Rode said and cocked his head to the side. "Don't you?" I did. I loved the way he looked rugged, though his skin was flawless and completely polished. He could have told me he slayed a dragon with both hands tied behind his back, and I would have believed it possible. Perhaps it was the allure of being in the presence of a vampire. I didn't know at that moment that Rode was a vampire, but the more time that passes, the more I am sure I fell for him in that very instant. Rode looked me up and down, and I realized he could see through my nightgown. He ran a fingertip from my throat, down through the middle of my breasts, and ended at my belly button. I shuddered. Out of nowhere, he hooked a hand around my waist and brought me against him. It all happened so languidly, as though it were choreographed. The slap of our wet bodies when Rode brought me close, and the feel of his palm on my forehead as he wiped a string of hair out of my eyes. He groaned when he met my eyes. And in that instant, Rode sank his teeth into my neck so fast that I didn't notice the sound of my skin breaking. There's a break, actually, in the prose, and then the next sentence is back in the present. The rain fell in a gorgeous pattern outside the art tower window. The campus was drenched, and once my eyes refocused, I watched students run for shelter or jump over puddles. So, I framed the flashback with rain. I used something consistent to link the flashback, to bring Lana back to a moment. Also to provide the reader with her story, how she became a vampire. So, I hope this wasn't boring. I wish I was a better actor. I wish I could speak Italian. Till next time.